Well, another aspect of the gas debate involves the idea of a national gas reservation. Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews has advocated for one, and the New South Wales Treasurer and Energy Minister Matt Kean has gone a step further, saying Western Australia should be forced to scrap its domestic reserve in favour of a national approach. Someone who hasn't taken kindly to that suggestion is the West Australian Premier Mark McGowan, who joins me live now from Perth. Premier, thank you so much for your time. Let's start with this proposal.
My pleasure, Andrew.
Let's start with this proposal from Matt Kean in New South Wales for WA to reserve some of its gas for the east. What do you make of it?
I think it's a little bit silly. The reason it's silly is there's no pipeline connecting Western Australia to the eastern states, and there's no LNG terminal facilities in Sydney or Melbourne. So it's a pity that the New South Wales government doesn't know that. But the reality is we can't just release the gas into the air and it drifts across Australia and they catch it. You actually have to have the infrastructure in place.
Well, can you talk us through your gas reservation policy, how it's worked, and is it true that in Western Australia your power bills are only set to go up about 2% next year?
Yeah, this year it was 2.5%, but we gave everyone a $400 credit on their electricity bill, so it actually went down significantly. Next year it's scheduled for 2.5% as well, so that's our forward estimates. The history of it is in 2006, the then Labor Premier Alan Carpenter put in place a gas reservation policy of 15%, and that's meant that we've had enough gas for local purposes, both for industry and households ever since. It was fought at the time by the then Prime Minister, John Howard, and his Minister, Ian Macfarlane. They said it was a mistake. It had mean no further investment in gas projects in Western Australia. It was also opposed by the gas major companies, in particular one CEO who took it very, very hard and suggested that Western Australia become like Venezuela and Hugo Chavez. What's happened, of course, is the opposite occurred. We've had huge investment, more than $100 billion of gas projects investment in Western Australia, and we've had enough supply for the domestic market, both for consumers and for industry. So the opposite occurred of what the doomsayers and naysayers were saying back in 2006. So it's a credit to the then Premier Alan Carpenter that he stood up to them because the campaign was fierce. I was a minister at that point in time and I remember it very well. And it's meant that Western Australia has been in a far, far, far better position than the eastern states.
Well, you've just met Jim Chalmers in Perth this afternoon, as I understand it. Did you suggest to him that perhaps the East Coast could adopt a similar model, a gas reservation?
We didn't discuss that, but I think I've suggested it before and people have heard it, that the gas is in the ground. It's actually the property of the people of Australia, that there should be some reservation for local purposes. It's not just for people, it's also for Australian industry. So it's not like it's just consumers that would benefit. It's also a lot of businesses, including major businesses and multinationals, would benefit from having a reservation policy.
Now, Ed Husic, the Industry Minister, has called the gas companies locusts and greedy. Do you agree with either of those assessments?
Well, it's not language I'd use, but I do think there is a responsibility for the gas companies to do the right thing. And in order to avoid any regulation, they should be looking at what they do and saying, this is what we're prepared to supply, and can we work out an arrangement in which major amounts of gas are supplied into the eastern states markets. That's what I think they should do. If that doesn't occur, well, then the government needs to look at some sort of regulatory regime to make sure it happens. There's a model here in Western Australia. We did it 17 years ago. It's worked when naysayers and doomsayers were wrong, and it's proven to work in the interests of the people of the state.
Well, you spoke before about this subsidy on WA electricity bills. Now, why is that necessary, the $400? That's actually the largest state government subsidy I understand in Australia. That suggests things aren't perfect with the power system there, doesn't it?
No, what it says is the government wanted to help families with cost of living pressures. That's all it says. So in our last budget, we provided that $400 credit. We did the same about a year before. We gave people a $600 credit. We've managed our finances in a way that means we're in significant surplus. We're paying down debt, but there are cost of living pressures in Western Australia, and we just wanted to help households at the time. We've put in place capped public transport fares. We've capped regional airfares. Back in COVID, we gave people free rats. We've done this as well to help families with cost of living pressures.
Do you think federal or state governments...
And we can do it, Andrew, we can do it. We can do it. We didn't sell off our electricity assets. So we actually control the billing system, so it's very easy for us to do this. So, you know, New South Wales sold their electricity assets. It was all meant to mean that there wouldn't be any debt. New South Wales has, got $150 billion of debt, climbing rapidly. We've got debt going down. We didn't sell our electricity assets. We're in significant surplus. We can help families.
Has WA got enough coal, though, to keep the lights on? I noticed reports this week you'll have to import it from interstate and overseas until 2030.
We certainly do have to get a couple of shiploads this Christmas just to have a backup. What happened was we have two very small coal mines in Western Australia because most of our electricity is renewables. Some of it is gas and some of it is coal. Unfortunately, because of the very wet winter and because of some equipment failures and some equipment that fell into the pit at one of the mines, there's been a lack of sufficient supply, so we're just having a reserve just in case. So we're buying at market rates from the sister or the parent company of the local coal miner in New South Wales. It comes on a ship across here. We'll have enough, we expect, for the summer demand, which of course is driven by air conditioning and by the sort of, you know, the spike in usage over that period.
Do you think Anthony Albanese and Chris Bowen's renewables policy will work? Can you see this many transmission lines being able to be rolled out to meet their target? Do you see any difficulty with it?
I'm not sure which aspect of their policy you're referring to, but the take-up of renewables across Australia continues apace, and that is largely by households. That drives down demand for generation produced by traditional sources like coal and gas. I expect the ongoing usage of renewables combined with batteries, combined with pumped hydro and those sorts of things will continue. I suspect in 10 years' time when we're having this conversation, or you are with whoever the premiers are at that point in time, renewables will be by far the bulk of power generation in Australia.